This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to a new season of the award-winning Adventures in Compliance, the podcast where we look at the Sherlock Holmes short stories, movies, novels, and related material from the angle of compliance. In this season, we're going to take up the novels of Arthur Conan Doyle around Sherlock Holmes. Of course, there are 4 of them: A Study in Scarlet, Hound of the Baskervilles, perhaps the most famous Sherlock Holmes story, The Sign of 4, and The Valley of Fear. We're going to take a deep dive into each one of these novels and going to explore them over 4 podcasts. So it'll be over the next 4 months that we'll be taking a deep dive into this season. The novels in many ways fill in the gaps about how and why and what Holmes does, and they're really a delicious deep dive exploration of Sherlock Holmes, his methods, his friendship with Watson, more of the backstory on Watson. And if you have the opportunity, they're relatively short, about 100 to 125 pages per novel. I would urge you to read these novels in their entirety. You can collect them in one work and do that. And I had a ton of fun reading them and preparing for this new season. There are some great stories in here, and I know you will enjoy them. And I hope you will enjoy this season of Adventures in Compliance really as much as I've enjoyed reading the stories. As you know, we concluded A Study in Scarlet, and in the month of June, we're going to take up The Sign of 4. In this introductory episode, or first episode to this 4-part series, I'm going to go through the storyline and look at 5 key compliance lessons from this great story. This novel begins with Mary Morstan arriving at the address of 221B Baker Street. There she explains to Holmes and Watson that 10 years earlier her father, Captain Arthur Morstan, disappeared immediately after arriving in London. Mary contacted his friend, Major Solto, who denied having seen him. 4 years later, she received a valuable pearl in the post, a gift repeated once a year for 6 years. With the 6th pearl, she received the letter asking for a meeting, claiming that she is a wronged woman. Holmes takes the case and soon discovers that Major Solto had died a week before Mary received the 1st pearl. The only further clue Mary can give Holmes is a map of the fortress found in her father's desk, appended with the words, The Sign of 4, which has 4 small cross-like symbols on it. Following the letter's instructions, Holmes, Watson, and Mary go to the Lyceum Theater. There they meet a coachman who takes them to the home of Major Solto's son, Thaddeus, the anonymous sender of the pearls. He reveals that Captain Morstan did, in fact, visit Major Solto, demanding half of his treasure that Solto had secretly brought back from India. In the ensuing quarrel, Captain Morstan suffered a heart attack and died, striking his head on the treasure box as he fell. Afraid he would be suspected of murder, Major Solto buried the body and hid the treasure, leaving out a small gold chaplet studded with 12 pearls. Thaddeus and his twin brother Bartholomew only learned of this when their father revealed it to him, or to them rather, on his deathbed. He was about to reveal to them where the treasure was hidden when a bearded man appeared at the window and Major Solto died of fear. The brothers tried and failed to catch the intruder, and later on they found a note pinned to the major's body which read, The Sign of 4. Thaddeus then began sending Mary the pearls to make things right as the brothers searched for the treasure. 6 years later, Bartholomew found it and withheld it. Thaddeus then contacted Mary so they could confront Bartholomew and demand his shares. The backstory to all of this is that there was a treasure in a prison in India, and the prison was then overpowered by Sikh troops, and given a choice, one of the 4, Jonathan Small, either be killed or help them. He sent a box of jewelry along with the Sikhs for safekeeping. But he then robbed and murdered them, and the crime was discovered, but the hidden jewels were not. Small and his accomplices got penal servitude for this. Some years later, Small learned that Major Sholto and Captain Marston, who had been guards at the convict barracks, had lost money playing cards. Small saw his chance and made a deal with the officers. Sholto would recover the treasure and in return send a boat to pick up Marston, Small, and the Sikhs so they could all divide it. However, Sholto stole the treasure for himself, returning to England after inheriting a fortune from his uncle. Marston went after Sholto but never returned, and Small vowed vengeance on Sholto. 4 years later, Small escaped prison with the help of Tongo, an islander whose life he had once saved. It was news of this escape that shocked Sholto into his fatal illness. Small arrived too late to hear of the treasure's location, but left a note in the room as his way of revenge for his treatment. When Bartholomew eventually found the treasure, Small only planned to steal it. However, a miscommunication led Tonga to kill Bartholomew before Small could stop him. Small decides the treasure brings nothing but bad luck to anyone who has it, as it had to prior owners, including Captain Marston and Major Sholto. Out of fear and guilt and for himself, he throws the treasure in the Thames River as he's escaping. The other part of the story going on is that the treasure would, of course, devolve to Mary. But now she has no treasure, and the treasure would have made her the richest woman in England. But now she has no treasure. And she has fallen in love with Watson over the course of the adventure. The loss of the treasure has removed any barriers that might have been between them. And Watson reveals that he has proposed to Mary, and she has accepted, much to the annoyance of the great consulting detective himself, Sherlock Holmes. What are some of the key lessons for compliance professionals from the Sign of 4? Well, number one, methodical investigation and attention to detail. As Sherlock Holmes famously notes, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. This systematic approach, prominently featured in this story, is essential for the compliance professional task with internal investigations. Holmes' methods of observation, documentation, logical deduction underscore the importance of meticulous attention to detail in compliance audits and investigations. By systematically eliminating irrelevant or impossible scenarios, compliance professionals can hone in on the root cause of the issues, identifying gaps in controls, and implement effective remediation steps. For the compliance professional, the key lesson learned is foster a methodical investigation process emphasizing documentation, evidence collection, and rigorous analysis to pinpoint accurate conclusions and drive compliance effectiveness. Holmes, of course, demonstrates this through his meticulous examination that every small detail can significantly add to a case's resolution. Compliance professionals must maintain similarly a rigorous discipline in their investigation. This involves thorough documentation, systematic collection of evidence, and careful analysis to discern facts clearly from assumptions. In the corporate compliance realm, overlooking minor details can allow critical issues to go unnoticed, escalating into larger organizational tasks. By consistently applying a structured and disciplined investigative methodology, compliance professionals can confidently isolate root cause, reinforce the integrity of their findings, and implement practical solutions thus safeguarding their organizations against financial, reputational, and regulatory threats. 2. Clear and open communication. Throughout the Sign of 4, Holmes and Watson's relationships highlights the necessity of clear communication and transparency. Watson's careful documentation and Holmes' candid explanations demonstrate that open communication is vital in unraveling complex situations. In the corporate compliance realm, transparency is equally crucial. Clear, effective communications channels must be established between compliance officers, management, and employees to ensure that issues are reported promptly and accurately. Fostering a culture of transparency reduces risk, facilitates early detection of problems, and promotes trust throughout the organization. The compliance lesson learned is to establish clear and effective communications channels within your organization. ensuring transparency and facilitating early detection and resolution of compliance issues. In this story, Holmes and Watson emphasize the importance of clarity and transparency, qualities essential in unraveling complex problems. Compliance professionals must likewise advocate and foster clear communication channels within their organizations. This transparency encourages employees to voice concerns promptly, enhancing the detection and management of risk before they escalate into more serious incidents. Clear and open dialogue between compliance teams, leadership, and the broader workforce not only helps swiftly address issues, but also builds organizational trust and strengthens compliance culture. Ultimately, effective communication ensures that compliance objectives and expectations are understood and met across all levels of your organization. 3. Understanding human behavior. Holmes' success often stems from his deep understanding of human behavior and motivations. He meticulously analyzes characters' backgrounds, behaviors, and potential motivations to piece together the puzzle. Similarly, compliance professionals must understand the human element within their organization. By recognizing what drives employee behaviors, whether it be financial incentives, personal pressures, or corporate culture, compliance teams can more effectively identify and mitigate risks associated with ethical behavior and fraud. For the compliance professional, they should invest time in understanding human motivations and organizational behavior to effectively predict, identify, and prevent compliance issues. Holmes achieves success partly because he profoundly understands human emotions and actions, recognizing how personal incentive drives behaviors. Compliance professionals must similarly deepen their understanding of employee psychology and organizational dynamics. Recognizing motivation, whether ambition, fear, or greed, simply to desire to conform to corporate expectations, enables compliance professionals to proactively manage and mitigate risk. By cultivating this empathetic awareness, compliance professionals can become better equipped to design targeted training programs, refine policies to influence behavior positively, and detect subtle red flags. Ultimately, understanding human behavior facilitates more effective compliance interventions, helping prevent misconduct and fostering a resilient ethical culture. 4. Vigilance against complacency. In The Sign of 4, Holmes repeatedly emphasizes vigilance. His awareness of even minor details and inconsistency prevents complacency and ensures constant preparedness. Likewise, compliance professionals must maintain vigilance, avoiding the trap of complacency even where the processes may seem effective and issues appear scarce. Risks evolve continuously, particularly in 2025, and compliance practices must proactively adapt to emerging threats, regulatory changes, and shifting business landscapes. Ongoing training, regular audits, and continuous improvement strategies are essential to staying ahead of compliance threats. For the compliance professional, maintaining constant vigilance and proactively adapting compliance measures to meet evolving risks and regulatory landscape changes is critical. Holmes' sharp vigilance throughout The Sign of 4 is instrumental in solving the case, emphasizing how complacency can be detrimental. Compliance professionals similarly must never allow successful past outcomes or a lull in incidents to diminish their alertness. The landscape of the compliance community continually evolves with new regulations, threats, and business risks emerging constantly. Compliance officers must regularly review processes, maintain ongoing training initiatives, and perform frequent proactive audits to anticipate and effectively manage emerging challenges. Maintaining this vigilant approach protects organizations from hidden risks and ensures preparedness, thereby preserving integrity, trust, and regulatory compliance in the long term. And finally, number 5, integrity and ethical fortitude. Holmes is defined by his unwavering and ethical stance and commitment to justice as demonstrated in The Sign of 4. Despite personal danger and or pressure, Holmes remains steadfast in his pursuit of truth and fairness. For compliance professionals, integrity and ethical courage are equally critical. Ethical fortitude ensures compliance officers hold firm to their principles, advocating for transparency, accountability, ethical practices even when facing resistance from higher-ups or challenging organizational cultures. Upholding these ethical standards sets a powerful example and reinforces a robust ethical culture within an organization. Our final compliance lessons learned is to cultivate and embody unwavering ethical integrity, setting clear expectations and standards for ethical behavior within your company. Throughout the sign of 4, Holmes embodies an uncompromising ethical stance, steadfastly seeking truth and justice, irrespective of personal risk or inconvenience. Compliance professionals need to exhibit unwavering ethical fortitude, often standing firm against organizational pressures or ethical dilemmas. Integrity serves as the foundation of an ethical compliance practice, enabling compliance officers to advocate strongly for transparency, accountability, and ethical decision-making within their companies. By demonstrating ethical leadership on a consistent basis, compliance professionals not only reinforce expectations, but establish a powerful model for all employees, thereby nurturing a robust organizational culture for your organization. The sign of 4 offers valuable lessons for today's compliance professionals by adopting Holmes' rigorous investigative methods, clear communications practices, and deep understanding of human behavior, vigilance against complacency, and ethical fortitude. Compliance professionals can strengthen their organizations against misconduct and regulatory risk. Just as Holmes relentlessly pursued truth and justice, compliance professionals must strive for excellence, integrity, and transparency to protect and advance their organizational values, culture, and reputation. Thank you for listening to this first episode of our special 4-part look at the Sherlock Holmes novel, The Sign of 4. This novel is not only a great detective story, but it provides lots of lessons for the compliance professional around compliance, ethics, investigation, organizational culture, and a wide variety of other areas that touch upon the corporate compliance experience in 2025. I know you will enjoy as we move forward through this podcast series on the Sign of 4, and I hope you will join me next week where we take up our next episode. The award-winning podcast Adventures in Compliance is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast? Would you like to start a podcast? In 2025, I think it would be a great time for you to start a podcast, and you can post it on the Compliance Podcast Network, the only podcast network in compliance and by far one of the most popular B2B podcast network around. So if you'd like more information on starting a podcast, please give me a shout. You can reach me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I hope that you will join me again next week where we take another look at the Sign of 4. One of the things that I think is so instructive about Holmes is how his methods from the late 19th and early 20th century and the novels of Arthur Conan Doyle are still relevant today, and they're still relevant for the compliance professional and many of the skill sets that we all need to have an effective compliance program. So sit back and enjoy the Sign of 4.